Tomodachi Life is a game that, despite how limited any actual gameplay there is, was still massively impactful and often even considered one of the best games to have come out on the 3DS. In a way, it almost doesn't make any sense. How does a game like this get so popular in the first place? Personally, I think its popularity can be attributed to the simple idea of being able to put whoever you want into one environment. When I was younger and playing my Wii all the time, my dream was to have the Miis interact with each other more and be able to see them explore in an environment that isn't just an empty white void. When I got Tomodachi Life, I played it for hours straight almost every day for months on end. I also think the humor and environment of the game played into its popularity a lot as well, since although the game is very absurd by nature, it is a very familiar and unalienating environment. Regardless of who you are, you can always find something fun to do. Though, if you've ever watched as many Tomodachi Life gameplay videos as I have, you may have noticed that there are a lot of massive visual changes to each regional version. Changes that don't entirely change the game per se, but are noticeable enough to completely change the feeling of it. These changes are made to accommodate for the cultures of different places in order to bring more familiarity to the home region of each version of the game. Today, I will be discussing some of these changes, most notably the changes between the United States, Japanese, and European and Australian versions of the game, with some stuff about the Korean version in between it all. Please note that it is extremely difficult to access information about the Korean version of the game, so my sources will remain limited. I have attempted to research it as much as I possibly can myself, though some things I may not have direct information on, as I am not Korean nor do I understand the language. A quick thing to note as well is that the American and European release is known as Tomodachi Life, while the Japanese release is titled Tomodachi Collection New Life, as it is a sequel to the game Tomodachi Collection. Assume that when I talk about Tomodachi Life, I am talking about the American, European, or Korean release unless stated otherwise. New Life is always the Japanese version. Starting off when you launch the game for the first time, in the Japanese version you will have the ability to transfer your save data from Tomodachi Collection into New Life. If you choose to do this, your lookalike will be pre-assigned to the game and you can then transfer the Miis of your choice into New Life. This will also automatically skip the tutorial. There is also a downloadable transfer tool available in the eShop to do this, though I haven't been able to get it to work. Other versions do not have this feature. Japan lacks the observational tower in the Nintendo 3DS image share. Instead, the roof replaces the tower. This is likely due to the fact that most places outside Japan don't really have rooftops that people just hang out on. Quality of life is also automatically visible instead of appearing once you make Street Pass tags. Another minor detail is that Miis have shadows on the save screen, while in other versions they do not. In New Life, it is possible for child Miis to date adult Miis. This feature was changed in other versions for obvious reasons. Also, the little indicator showing if a Mii is a child or an adult is not present. The kid-o-matic is also not present in this game. The age-o-matic is, as it is necessary for Miis to get married if one or both of them is a child. During the age-o-matic marriage cutscene, the adult Mii will sit to the side and watch as the spray is applied to the child Mii. This can only happen in other versions if two child Miis have dated long enough for one of the Miis to turn 18 before they get married. In New Life and Collection, it is possible for Miis to confess to married Miis. This was removed from other versions, likely because it could imply infidelity. In New Life, when Miis are napping, they sleep directly on the floor instead of on the blue mats provided in other versions. In Japan, dreams are represented by the kanji yume, meaning dream in English. In other releases, this icon is changed to a night sky. The Korean version shows something similar to the Japanese version, reading as the Korean term kum, which is under the same definition. When Miis get depressed, purple embers will appear around them in both Japanese and Korean versions. In other releases, this was changed to a rain cloud. The embers in rain cloud can be seen from the outside of a Mii's apartment. Also, sometimes Miis and certain personality groups will cry in the Japanese release. This was completely removed in other versions. Some gestures are different. When Miis befriend each other in New Life, they will bow. In localized versions, this was changed to a wave. Also, Miis will use their hands to beckon the player to play a game with them by waving towards them. This was changed to the Miis waving their arms around, as the former could be interpreted as something else. Catchphrases are a little weird in New Life. Miis simply will ask for a catchphrase and no pose can be given. In other versions, you can choose a phrase and then a pose for that phrase. In New Life, when a Mii wants to confess, gray moya moya clouds will appear, with moya moya meaning to be uncertain. In other versions, these were simply changed to floating hearts with question marks. In both Tomodachi Collection and New Life, you can select a Mii's blood type to either A, B, AB, or O. In Japan, blood type works kinda similar to zodiac signs. This was removed in localized versions because of the cultural difference. The colors used in a Mii's relationship list are different. In New Life and the Korean version, closest ever Mii's are pink, whereas Mii's relationship are failing are blue. In America and Europe, these colors are changed to dark green and purplish blue. When you look into a Mii's face in New Life, the Mii will have an anime-esque blush, and some Miis will shake their heads back and forth. In other versions, this was simply changing the Mii's cheeks blushing, since it's possible players may not get the reference. Mii's will also practice winking instead of practicing funny faces. In New Life, when Mii's are finished eating, they will wipe their face with their arms, whereas in localized versions, Mii's will wipe their face with their hands. Also in New Life, Mii's will always thank the player when they are given a kind of food or medicine. Mii's aren't really all that thankful in localized versions. In New Life, if you call a Mii over while they are doing something, they will bow instead of panting or waving. A mouth icon is used for catchphrases in Japan. In other versions, aside from a few European releases for some reason, this is replaced with a little speech bubble since it could appear off-putting. In New Life, when Mii sleep in beds, the bed does not have a wooden frame. In New Life, the classroom confession scene appears differently. Not only is the room decorated completely different, but the Japanese version features the Mii closing the door behind them instead of it just closing automatically. Of course, as to be expected, the dialogue is different between all versions. Almost all strings of dialogue are completely different, so I can't explain all of them that vividly. Check the Tomodachi Life wiki if you want to see the specific differences. In the item matching minigame, you will lose hearts left to right in all versions besides New Life. In Japan, they will fall right to left. When being congratulated for winning a game, fireworks appear in the American and European versions. In Japan, smiley faces are used instead, likely due to the fact that smiley faces aren't normally used to congratulate people in other places. When losing, instead of seeing rain clouds, sweat drops appear. This was changed for similar reasons. New Life features a minigame where you tap on the screen to move a Mii doll to push them over. In Japan, this event is sumo wrestling. In America, it is football, and in Europe, it's just wrestling. In New Life, when doing item matching with another Mii, matched panels will appear as orange and green instead of red and blue. When you win a game of cards in New Life, you will do a peace sign instead of a thumbs up. Also, in the European version of the game, the aces are replaced with kings. In New Life, when you randomize faces in the photo studio, some Miis will appear with their mouths open. This isn't normally possible in other versions aside from child photos. Poses between the different versions are altered. New Life is also missing a couple of photo templates, including amusement park, class photo, circus cutouts, mountains, pet photobomb, prom, promo ballad, promo musical, promo techno, sightseeing, stadium, stardust, sunset, superhero cutouts, wedding 2, heart, framed photo, and reading with parents. The photo templates Enka and graduation album are exclusive to Japan. The template School Days is exclusive to Europe. In Japan, an additional child Mii costume is present called the Kappa costume. This outfit is exclusive to New Life's clothing wardrobe, likely due to the fact that Kappas are not well known outside Japan. In the concert hall, New Life has a total of 6 songs, these songs being pop, rock and roll, metal, opera, and enka, which is a traditional Japanese ballad. Other versions do not have enka, as it is replaced by ballad. These versions also have 2 new songs, techno and musical. The lyrics between the American English and British English versions are different too, except for techno. In New Life, you have the option to use templates of words for your lyrics instead of writing them in, though writing them in is also an option. Also, if a Mii mentions another Mii, food, or treasure, it will appear on the screen behind them for a couple seconds. These are features carried over from Tomodachi Collection's Songmaker, while adding the ability to actually write your own lyrics. In New Life, during metal performances, a demon face will flash on screen behind the performers. In other versions, this was changed to flaming guitars. Daily donations are collected in a massive white box in New Life. In other versions, they're collected inside of a glass piggy bank. Also, the events happening at the fountain in the evening differ a little. In New Life in Europe, a game called Shiritori, or Word Chain, is played. The goal is to continue a chain of words with the next word you say starting with the last letter of the previous word. For example, if you start off with the word banana, it goes to apple, and then eggplant, etc. In America, and sometimes in Europe, a rap battle will happen instead. The relationship tester has a completely different soundtrack between versions. In Japan, various piano tracks will play during the relationship testing events. In other versions, it is changed to a couple jazzy tracks. In the background of this video, I have played a lot of the love tester music, as well as music from the unused piano item. The music played at the docks is also different regionally, as well as special New Year's music that plays in Japan only. In New Life, the relationship tester can test almost anyone romantically. This includes child and adult Miis, sibling Miis, or a Mii and their parents. Although Miis can do a romance test with their relative, they cannot actually date them. The friendship pairing only appears when matching 2 Miis of the same gender settings. Poses also differ slightly for different relationship tester rankings regionally. At Mii homes in New Life, it is possible to see a couple bathing together, sometimes with their child if they have one. In all localized versions, this is changed to 1 Mii showering alone in their house. The end credits photo album also has 2 different photos in New Life, one of the baby on a swan potty and another of the baby washing the dad's back. These were replaced with an image of the mom potty training the baby, and another of the parents playing soccer with the child. Also, in the Korean version of the game, the mask the dad uses to scare the baby is different. The glass door to the yard is clear in New Life, but it is changed to textured glass in other versions. When rocking a day-old baby in New Life, the hands will be in a holding position. In other versions, they are in a rocking position. In New Life, if you choose for a full-grown child to stay on the island, they will appear in the father's apartment. In other versions, they'll be inside the couple's house. In New Life, when suggesting the name for a baby, the first name the parents will suggest will be a combination of the two parents' names. This was also changed regionally since it is harder to combine names in other languages. In New Life, the fences surrounding the house is made up of rectangular planks. In other versions, this is changed to a picket fence. If the player doesn't spin the child during the Day 4 and 5 babysitting minigame, in New Life, the child will spread their arms out. In localized versions, this was changed to the child grabbing the player's arms. Also, in Europe and Japan, a small warning appears in the minigame telling you to not spin your child in real life. This is absent in America for some reason. During the superhero dream in New Life, Miis will wear their superheroine costume regardless of gender. Since cross-dressing is considered somewhat absurdist in other places, this was changed so that male Miis wore the Robo-Hero suit. In the Japanese version of the Drive Dream, the hula girl will instead be a protective charm dangling from the mirror. In the Dream stick figure and backpack, New Life has a stick figure and charm hanging from a rope tied to the neck of the both of them. The rope was removed from the stick figure dream, and the skeleton charm was changed to hang on the rope with its hand in order to avoid possible references to people literally hanging. In New Life, a dream exclusive to that version of the game is present, known as Familiar. This is what the dream looks like. In the Korean version, there are 3 new dreams, including one similar to the ritual dream depicting a traditional fan dance, another depicts Mii's attempting to chase down and catch a pig, and the last one depicts a Mii about to perform a bungee jump but nervously backing out repeatedly, wherein you can just push them off yourself. In the red thread dream, it is possible for a Mii of the same sex to appear at the other end in New Life. This was changed in localized versions, possibly to avoid romantic implications since the game infamously does not include same-sex couples. In the Japanese factory tour dream, it is possible to dip the Miis in black or white paint. This was removed in other versions, likely to avoid potentially looking racist. In the falling dream, in New Life, the Mii will fall on a banana instead of a hamburger. In the hiding dream, when a Mii slips off a rope in New Life, they will fall and hop while completely stiff with no animation. In the workout dream, in the US, Miis will eat a hot chili pepper. In Europe and Japan, they will have an energy drink. In Japan, during the Mii's Temper newscast, the Mii will be flailing on the ground while other Miis look at them. Due to this kind of looking like a seizure, it was changed to the Mii standing up and stomping angrily in other versions. The Mii Eraser newscast in New Life has the eraser appear as red. In other versions, the eraser is blue. In the Mii Kindergartner newscast, New Life depicts the kindergartner Mii wearing a yellow hat and blue smock shirt. In localized versions, it's changed to a tricolor shirt with no hat. In the I Love Me contest newscast, in New Life, the Miis present in the article are all male but will wear dresses. For similar reasons to the superhero dream, this was changed to all the Miis present being female. In New Life, when unlocking the romance breaking, the newscast shows 2 Miis, one of each gender, on the screen. In localized versions, this was changed to just 1 Mii. In the Leisure Island Opens newscast, in New Life, the Mii will have a different pose than in localized versions. In the Olympian Skydiver newscast, the Japanese version depicts the Mii falling to the ground and then showing a clip of that town shaking slightly. In localized versions, this was changed to a Mii getting caught by a net intended to save a kitten. The fashion show in Japan depicts all Miis occasionally cross-dressing on the runway. Male Miis will also walk in a more feminine way. Again, this was changed and the animation for male Miis differs when walking down the runway. The Japanese and Korean versions have a newscast titled Mr./Miss Blank Who Was Fat. Due to this being somewhat controversial in localized versions, this was removed entirely. The background images for the Islander Thoughts section of the newscast differ between regions slightly. In Tomodachi Life, a report called Mii Bird Causes a Flap depicts a Mii as a rare bird. In Japan, this report is about a bagworm. This was changed since it depicts Miis hanging off a cliff of a bridge. In Japanese and Korean versions, Miis bow after newscasts. In other versions, they just tap the papers in their hands to the desks. In New Life, the age of the Mii being interviewed in the Islander Thoughts segment will be visible if the Mii has an age assigned to them. The birthday song is sung in full in the Japanese version, but is only hummed in other versions since the game got localized releases around the time that the happy birthday song was going through copyright hell. In New Life, if a Mii's name is written in hiragana, it can sometimes appear as katakana in news reports. The quality of life rank announcement newscast is absent from New Life, since it is available from the start of the game. In Japan, Mii's can travel to Egypt, Guam, Italy, and Kyoto if you give them a travel ticket. All of these locations are removed in the American version with the exception of Guam, now Tahiti, and Kyoto, now Japan. Africa is not an available vacation in New Life. Instead, Saharan sand is received when you go to Egypt. The souvenir given to the player in Japan and Europe if a Mii travels to Germany will be a piece of the Berlin Wall. In the US, this item is replaced with a nutcracker. In Japan, when Mii's are about to take a photo, they will just name the location that they are in instead of a quip about the scene. This was a feature carried over from Tomodachi Collection. In Japan, when Mii's travel to the USA, they will only travel to New York. Australia is absent from the Japanese version, since, as we all know, Australia does not exist in real life. The music used for certain vacations between regions are swapped around. For example, the music used when a Mii is in Germany in the US version will play the same music as Japanese Mii's in Switzerland. Mr. Tomo, aka the non-Mii shopkeepers, are different in all regions. In the US, shopkeepers have a wooden block head. In Europe, they have a robot head. In Korea, they wear a motorcycle helmet. In Japan, they wear Kuroko stage masks, which, if you are unfamiliar, are worn by kabuki theater performers who both run the stage crew and act as ensemble for some scenes during shows. The shopkeepers probably wear masks to represent not really being anyone in particular. Also, this was another thing carried over from Tomodachi Collection. Food selection is vastly different between localized versions. I don't want to torture myself by naming all the food, but here's all the items exclusive to Japan, the items exclusive to Europe, and the items exclusive to America. Notice that some of these foods carry over between one region. I could not make a Korean list, unfortunately, since it is really hard for me to find info on the Korean version in general. Also note that a lot of food items exclusive to Europe are special foods in other regions, though I would consider them to be a separate class of items. In Japan and Europe, an interior item called 50s Japanese is available. This item did not make it to the American version, since Americans may not be familiar with the time period. Also, the classroom and bathhouse interiors change between regions, with the Japanese appearance being carried over from Tomodachi Collection. Also, in the game room, the poster next to the Game Boy is different based on region. In Japan, it shows a disc writer. In localized versions, it displays an NES. Some Spot Pass and Street Pass items become normal shop items in different versions of the game. Some of those items do not appear at all in other localized versions. In New Life, the appearance of Mr. Tomo is based on the skin tone and gender of the Mii lookalike. This is changed in other localized versions. Clothing items for the most part are not all that different between versions. However, a couple exclusive Japanese items exist. Some color variants to localized items are different. The voice synthesizer used and accents used change regionally in order to adapt to the language of each region. Spot Pass items were given out longer in Japan and Europe than in America. Also, Update 2.0 was released in Europe, but most likely will not release anywhere else. The music that plays in the cafe is from Tomodachi Collection. In New Life, the lyrics from these songs play. In localized versions, the music does not have any lyrics. Words used on clothing items change between regions. The skateboard, kite, and metal detector are absent in Japan. The mirror item is slightly more reflective in the Japanese version. In Japan, when you first add your Mii, they will ask for a new friend on the island. In localized versions, Mii's will ask for food before asking for a new friend. When a traveler comes home, you can choose for the Mii to have a snack and take a nap. In localized versions, you have the option to choose both, while in Japan, you can only do one or the other. The appearance of the romance rank and vitality rank change regionally. In Japan, Tomodachi Quest is only available in the afternoon. In localized versions, it can be played in both the afternoon and late evening. In localized versions, Mii's will react after a successful proposal. In Japan and Korea, they don't pay attention. Some photos taken with the disposable camera have been altered, specifically anything involving the roof/tower or the windows at the cafe. Japan is the only region where Mii's do not pose when a personality is given to them. This was changed in Miitomo. Also, their voices are finally adjusted in Miitomo, which, real quick, let me compare the voices between these versions because honestly, they should have done this way sooner.
夢を一つだけ叶えてあげようって言われたら、私は何を叶えたいんでしたっけ？
どうしても付き合いたいんです。見捨てないでください。
Poses in Europe and America for certain personality types are switched around for some of them. When using the mobile, Japanese Mii's will hang from the mobile. In localized versions, they will sit in baskets. In Japan, Mii's will look directly at the player in quirky questions. They're angled slightly in other versions. Christmas music on the island plays longer in the US and Europe versions than it does in Japan, going on until New Year's. In Japan, traditional sounding New Year's music will play. A whole bunch of treasures that have not made it into the localized versions and were instead replaced with something else. This is also in addition to some special food items. I can't find every image of the special foods, but here's another collage of some of the exclusive treasures in Japan. This is most of everything I was able to gather for this video. It is entirely possible that I forgot something or a change I wasn't even aware of is present. If that's the case, feel free to tell me in the comments and I'll write it in the description. Again, I want to thank the Tomodachi Life wiki for having a list of this information. It must have been hell to organize as it was hell for me, if it's not evident already. I have a massive love for these games, and I would love to see more attention towards the little stuff become more public. Who knows, maybe Nintendo will announce another Tomodachi Life game. Even with the failure of Miitomo, I'm sure many people will enjoy it, with or without changes as massive as these. Thank you very much for listening to this nightmarishly long spiel about the regional Tomodachi Life variations.